And we are back here for episode 2, season 2 of Spiders Byte. And we are here and got a great show lined up for you tonight. So we'll discuss the Spiders 14-21 loss to Lehigh. Uh, my thoughts on Coach Russ Huesman's presser on Wednesday. And also the matchup against the Wofford Terriers, a rematch from last year's Spiders season opener. We'll talk about those as well, and also some keys to a Richmond Spiders victory for potentially their first win onto the season. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. What happened on Saturday? As I mentioned, that the Spiders lost 21-14 to Lehigh. There was some good things in this game. Obviously, the Isaiah Dawson 99-yard kickoff return. That's the first for the Spiders as far as a kickoff return of that length since 2021. You looked at Peyton Sealman, who one of the 8 first-time starters on this Richmond Spiders team. He had 12 tackles on the game as well on last Saturday. The ugly, obviously, you look at the seven penalties that resulted in 79 yards, including 4 passing interference penalties, at which essentially help Lehigh essentially continue drives and what have you. So especially with a Richmond team that normally isn't as penalized as much. So this kind of like almost kind of piggyback kind of what Coach Huesman said last week as far as the uncertainty about the opening game, where you never know how things will play when it comes to penalties, turnovers, and what have you. And you look at it where, typically Richmond isn't, when it comes to those penalties, really don't commit those penalties that we've seen of the past. So definitely a learning curve for this team. And obviously, as mentioned, there were 8 first-time starters in this game for Richmond. Then also, there was some positives also on the offense. Where you looked at Kyle Wickersham had a 1-yard touchdown run. Pretty much what led to that drive was the CJ Frazier interception that helped put Richmond on the scoreboard for them in last Saturday's game. So it's kind of one of those things. Hey, it's in the rearview mirror. And you just keep going and you go to the next one. This was another learning curve for this Richmond team, which if you look at from a glass half full, like I typically do, I think those type of situations, we've seen the last couple of years where Richmond has struggled in the beginning of the season and kind of pick up momentum as the season progressed. Could potentially be on target for that same situation in a sense. But, I think if they clean those things up, you look at that situation where, hey, they had some stuff going on from a half glass perspective. Hey, first half of the glass, you're like, man, yeah, those penalties did them in. Sometimes you look at it like, as far as the lack of discipline or what have you. But the other half say, hey, you think to yourself, you're on the road, the best team probably won in the Patriot League, and you almost had an opportunity to win that football game, despite all the shortcomings that you had coming into this game. So, like I said, it's on to the next. So, I want to talk about Coach Russ Huesman's presser on Wednesday, and I know he talked about the effort last week, and he had mentioned, I know shout out to our guy John O'Connor for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. He asked as far as some takeaways after kind of looking at the film and just what was the overall taste on it. So a lot of it, he said pretty much what many we thought was going to say. Obviously, the O-line wasn't great. He also talked about that the team did. They competed, they played hard, and he also had emphasis on the penalties as well. Talking about how the 7 penalties that resulted in 79 yards was something that essentially that needs to be cleaned up. So it's kind of one of those press conferences that you kind of knew that, hey, that was going to be asked, and more than likely that was going to be pretty much going to be her response, especially if you looked at that game on Saturday. So as we move forward, we definitely got to talk about this matchup on Saturday, a 6 o'clock game as the Spiders are back on the road yet again. They went up north this last week. Now they're going down south to Wofford. This Wofford team has 10 starters that came back from last year. So that's going to be really a interesting task compared to kind of almost like where Lehigh, I think they had like 16 or 17 guys returning altogether, but they have 10 starters returning from the 2024 season. And as I mentioned in the intro, it is a rematch of the 2024 University of Richmond's season opener, where the Spiders lost 26-19, which is interesting. Now on the other end of the foot, this is Wofford's home opener. So this is really interesting how that all kind of plays out. And obviously, Wofford was on the road last week and they lost 15-16 in South Carolina State. Their game was almost eerily similar to the Spiders, where as far as they had opportunities to win this football game, but didn't. And they had a kickoff return by Colby Alexander, and not like Isaiah Dawson's 99-yard, but Colby Anderson had I think it was the 89-yard kickoff return. And then also they had some other special teams helped them out as far as they got a punt return as well, and also got a safety. So that's hence why they got that 15 points on the board, but fell short in the final possession with South Carolina State. Marched down the field with like I think they had their scoring drive was like 3 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and then obviously Wofford couldn't punch it in those final 3 minutes. And here we are here now on a Saturday evening kickoff at 6 p.m. So let's talk about some players to watch for Wofford. In that game, it was really kind of a defensive guy who really cut their teeth in. Where you look at like Eli Campbell and also C.J. Combs. Eli is a cornerback, and also Combs is a safety. They had 9 tackles apiece, which they led Wofford in tackles last week. And another guy that you really want to see that's for Wofford, a stud, and Brandon Maina. He had 2 sacks last week for Wofford. So, and look at that. Their running backs, there could be some that could be critical in this game as well too. But I definitely look at them. Their stars pretty much has been like on the defense in the sense, especially when you compare what they've done this season. That's pretty much what their mark, because obviously they really didn't get much on offense. They just had the punt return, the kickoff return, and then the safety, and that was pretty much all their points last week. So the keys to a Richmond Spiders victory, for their first victory of the season, I think they need to limit penalties. Like I discussed, I think when you have a situation where you have 7 penalties for 79 yards, that could definitely be is crushing. And like I mentioned, out of those 7, 4 of those were a pass interference. So that that gives your opposing offense an opportunity to extend drives and pretty much put your defense in a tiresome situation where they are on the field for extended long time, compared to, hey, let's just close it out. Let's get the defense some rest, and then we come on offense. So another thing too, as well too, win the turnover battle. And I think that's going to be the key. And we talked about that last year as well too, and even coming into this game, turnovers is key. You look at even like I just mentioned, the C.J. Frazier interception pretty much helped the offense, where on that possession following C.J. Frazier's interception, Richmond was able to get some points on the board by that Kyle Wickenshaw 1-yard run. So that put points on the board. So you have those type of situations where you get those points on turnovers well, when you have those situations where your offense may not be lacking of, but they could be thrust into a position where they could um, be in a position if they get some turnovers and have a short field and do what they need to do. And also, too, it just gives and it's a demoralizing feeling when you're on the other end of the spectrum of that turnover where, hey, it could definitely be, those could be essentially the differences in this game, especially in a game like this. I definitely think win that turnover battle will be key. And I think Kyle Wickersham, I think he, if he just becomes, obviously what he's doing, still efficient. Last week, I think where he went 14 for 20. He had I think it was 44 yards rushing. So he had some opportunities in that game as well too. I think if he uh, gets going, and I really think that Richmond can have a decent air attack in this game. I mean, considering the fact when we looked at it, how on the Wofford end, their two leading tackles was in the secondary. So it's just kind of show you, hey, the secondary, might have a little weakness on Wofford's side. So you look at it from the standpoint, hey, can those guys essentially take advantage of that? So I definitely think those are my three keys for a Richmond Spiders victory. So this wrap up episode 2 of Spiders Byte. And we'll catch you guys next week. And we have a hell of an opponent next week in the North Carolina Tar Heels. Cannot wait to chop it up with you guys and talk about our matchup against a FBS foe. And we'll catch you guys on our next one. And we're out.